Welcome back, everybody. We'll begin with the last session for what has been an incredible conference so far. This panel will focus on how to move from pipeline to powerhouse, which is basically enabling young women who enter into the STEM workforce. How do we make sure that they lead, influence, and shape the future of knowledge and discovery? With me today, I have Dr. Anita Seth, who's going to be chairing the session. Dr. Anita Seth is a global public health researcher and a faculty at Johns Hopkins. Along with her, we have Kanta Singh from UN Women India. Kanta Singh is a nationally recognized advocate for gender responsive programming in education, skilling, and leadership development. We also have with us Shereen Bhan, who is the leadership director at WomenLift Health, which brings deep insight into how institutional change and personal transformation intersects to support women's rise to leadership. We have Kalpana Kanthan, who is from American India Foundation and leads the philanthropic initiatives. Uh, and finally, we have Manuela from the World Bank, who combines a background in economics and health systems to spotlight how investments in women scientists and innovations yield outsized development returns. So, with this splendid panel in place, I'll hand it over to Dr. Anita Sayed to take it forward. A big round of applause, please.
Thank you, Nitisha, and thanks to all of you. Um, I'm so thrilled to welcome you to this panel called From the Pipeline to the Powerhouse, Catalyzing Women's Leadership in STEM. My name is Anita Shet, and I'm a pediatrician and public health researcher at the Bloomberg School. And gender equality and health equality has always been something, not just issues to talk about, but a call to action in a way. And when we look around us, we do see progress. We see more women in companies and global initiatives and in labs. But what is it that we don't see? We don't see women setting the agenda or designing the system or just leading the charge, right? So that's what we are here to talk about today. I'm really happy to have this amazing panel with us today, powerhouse leaders who've broken ceilings and codes and social norms. So we can begin right away. And maybe my first question is to Kalpana, who is from the American Indian Foundation. In your programs, you have these verticals of public health and education and livelihood. And you focus on young women. So I want to ask you, how do you identify and support young girls who want to enter into STEM fields, and what are the barriers that you typically face?
Absolutely happy to answer and thrilled to be part of this panel. So, thank you for having me. The American India Foundation is the largest Indian diaspora led US based collective philanthropic platform that does work in poverty alleviation in India, right? And we do it through interventions in health, education, livelihoods, and leadership development. Speaking about getting girls and women into STEM, one of our largest education initiatives is the Digital Equalizer Program, where we enter government schools in the thousands through MOUs that we sign with state governments, getting access to thousands of schools where we bring in our pedagogy, our DE way of teaching and learning. We train the teachers to teach STEM subjects in a way that's engaging, hands-on, allowing kids to use their imagination, creativity, critical thinking skills. We set up these STEM Innovation and Learning Centers, SILCs. Remember, this is happening in over 55,000 government schools in rural and urban areas. And we've served over 9 million young boys and girls through DE. So half of them are girls. So think about it. That's almost 5 million young girls who've been exposed to the joys of coding, of programming, of building a drone, of seeing it fly, of entering international competitions in robotics, etc. And these girls, when we talk to them, earlier they may not have had any aspirations for their career, but you should see the confidence with which they say, I want to become an astronaut or I want to become a space scientist. So there are no barriers to the capability and, the kind of inspiring work that young girls can dream to do and actually do. The barriers come more in the behavior of the people around them, in the sense of expectations. How much would you dare to dream for a young girl in your community? That's where most of the barriers lie, in the age of education that we're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Reminds me of this anecdote. When I was in my field visits in rural Karnataka, we were working with girls who were dropped out of school and were trying to get back on track. And one of them, a 14-year-old, said that she wants to be an aerospace engineer. And I was taken aback and I said, why? And she said, very simply and directly, because if I stay on the ground, I'll never take off. She meant it very literally, I think. When you said your story, it reminds me of that. But I think it was quite profound. And in a way, that's what we are trying to do, to take off, not individually perhaps, but systemically. So that's really nice that you mentioned that. But speaking of this whole pipeline that we have, I want to think about a little bit of how can we integrate different aspects of the pipeline. Maybe I can direct my question to Kanta Singh from UN Women India. You have a lot of programs that focus on women, specifically women from underserved areas, women from tribal and rural backgrounds. What do you think about bringing these programs together? So, grassroots level community-based programming and public policy, how do you bring them together, weave them to create this enabling environment for young girls?
Thank you, Anita, and thank you, Kalpana, for setting the stage. In fact, we start from where Kalpana leaves. We start talking to girls and young women when they are 18, and before that, our sister agency, UNICEF, takes care of their aspirations. But one of the major barriers, and I go back to where Kalpana was talking about barriers, one of the major barriers that girls and women face is that nobody invests in asking them what they want to be. Many women, when they grow up, and first time somebody wants to know about their dreams, and then they realize, oh my God, nobody ever asked me about this. In the families, boys are generally asked, what is it that you want to become when you grow up? Nobody invests. And I've been talking about my dream to start something like, you say TED Talk, and I'm saying Girl Talk. And somebody can ask the young woman, put a mic in front of them and say, what is it that you want to become? And then it starts from there. The story of our lives is that we don't even help ourselves dream. This is the young woman that you're talking about, 14-year-old girl, who says, I want to become this. Because she says, if I stay here on the ground, I will not be allowed to fly, right? When I was young, seriously, I used to feel that, my dreams were very different from everybody else's. I used to think about flights and aeroplanes. And I said, I used to think I'm weird, I'm mad. That why am I thinking I'm in a rural area in Haryana? It used to be a very different kind of dream. But where my dreams and where my reality is today, UN Women, is matching now. I know I'm hardly off the planes. So your exposure determines where you will reach. So young women, young girls need to be invested in their aspirations and believing in their dreams, and then putting money where it really needs to be put. UN Women starts with ITIs and polytechnics because all the most marginalized girls in the most remote areas go there because that is the opportunity they get. And so we started working with them with digital skills and bringing in industry exposure to young women, saying career could be a good option for you. You don't have to be self-employed every time you enter ITI. I don't know if people here understand what industrial training institutes are. India has thousands of them. All boys' ITIs have been taken over by industry. And girls' ITIs, there's not even a single industry leader who adopts girls' ITIs. They are 50-year-old courses, learning dress designing, food production, stenography, Nobody is interested in investing in them. And this is where UN Women invests. UN Women is bringing everything that boys' ITIs get, starting from education to getting them set up labs which are ready to train them on industry-led or demand-led skills. We bring the industry leaders there and to say, here is a talent pool, why don't you choose from here? We take the girls on industry exposures and we encourage them to get into science-related, manufacturing-related, auto manufacturing, all those kinds of non-conventional roles. And we are very happy that some of the tribal girls have moved states from Madhya Pradesh to Gujarat, from remote areas of Maharashtra to another city to go and work there. So it's been a very heartwarming experience. Nobody should say these are the skills for rural girls or these are for urban girls. This is for boys and this is girls. We decide those things for them. It is not girls. So what we have also seen is that our girls are ready for jobs. Industry is not ready for girls to start there. So we need to work on both hands. Of course, UN being UN, we have to work with the government. At the same time, when government is thinking about revamping 1,000 ITIs this year, and they have put budget aside for that, we are saying at least 30% of them, because that's the number ratio in the country, 30% of them have to be women-led ITIs and women's ITIs, so that you start building their infrastructure, the capacity of the trainers and the teachers who are there, and also bring in industry there. So it's been very interesting. We are working in 3 states at the moment, but digital skills program is with all kinds of women in many, many states, in 12 states.
May I add to that?
Of course.
Yeah. Kantaji, thank you so much for bringing this up because AIF also works with thousands of ITIs. These are industrial training institutes, right, run by the government of India. And we work particularly in the ones in Rewari, where we have trained a number of women to start their own businesses. Of course, there's the sewing skills, there's the digital skills, remote learning skills, remote work skills, etc. But maybe the most interesting is training young women to become green electricians for electric vehicles, right? Because with Hero Electric, this was a partnership. It takes a different kind of body structure and skills to be a mechanic for an electric vehicle, right? As opposed to a traditional mechanic, which is very apprentice-based, the learning model, from and it's male dominated, right? But when you're entering the field of creating EV mechanics, you can actually bring women to the forefront, and we've trained hundreds of women to become mechanics for electric vehicles with this partnership. So I think the key thing in pipeline development is partnerships, public-private partnerships, right? There's those of us who are part of the civil society, but then there's the government, there's corporations, and that's how we can create this thriving pipeline of women to enter these fields.
That's amazing that you talk about this closing of the gender gap in a way, and actually tapping on the inherent skills of women, the frugality and the ability to adapt. I think that's great. But talking of closing the gender gap, I think the World Bank has brought out a really good strategy, a gender strategy in 2024 that has looked at 3 important and fairly thoughtful pillars, which is to end gender violence, gender-based violence, and enhance economic opportunities for women, and to engage women as leaders. So I wanted to direct this question to Manuela. How do you think this gender strategy can be implemented within to enhance the role of women, and in a way to build resilience in health systems and in society overall?
Thank you so much, and thank you. I'm standing on the shoulders of giants here. But it's a great question, and I think in the bank there's still a lot of discussion, and there's still a lot of space for figuring out what exactly we're going to do. As you said, yes, the strategy has kind of 3 strategic objectives. One is ending gender-based violence and elevating human capital, which is a really kind of essential level of women's needs, and that's super important. Then there is the expanding of enabling economic opportunities, so the participation in the labor market, which is a different level of needs. And then the engagement of women as leaders, which again is a different. That's what I love about the strategy, that it's trying to tackle the issues that women are facing at a lot of different levels. It's not just visionary for years to come, but it's really understanding where women are at this moment and trying to tackle that. Exactly what that means in implementation is a very big concept, and I think the strategy is for all the different sectors that the bank works in, and each sector will have to figure out exactly what it is that we do to make all of these objectives really happen. In the health sector, there have been a lot of different discussions on how to tackle women's needs. Specific for resilience, which is one of the topics that I think is at least close to my heart. Thinking about women in the health sector being the main human resources delivering care, and also the main seekers of healthcare for themselves or for their families. So basically, the health sector is largely women in the supply and the demand, not in the leadership, which is something I'm sure Shereen will talk about, which is a huge gap. But in some ideas of thinking about resilience, and again, thinking about the needs. So basic things for resilience are making sure that the essential services for women are really being delivered and will maintain their delivery at a time of a shock, of whatever shock, economic shock or another epidemic. The sexual and reproductive health services during COVID dropped dramatically, and that is still having a huge impact on women. So how do we tackle that? And the strategies are many. For example, there's strategies that can be implemented by governments, which we work closely with, to bring services close to the communities and to people. During a shock, women can have greater adverse difficulties, I guess, in reaching health facilities and in really coming to access the services that they need. So something like mobile health vans, or really using the community health workers or whatnot to come to people rather than expect women to bring their families in a very difficult time for economic reasons or safety reasons or whatever it is that is happening due to that shock. There is an importance of investing in financing for making sure that both women seeking care or needing to seek care for themselves or their children are provided with the care, but also financing that is sufficient to maintain the human resources that are supposed to be supplying this care. That includes financing for protective equipment that fits women, for example, or financing for childcare or elderly care that women are taxed with, and makes it very difficult to be able to provide services. That's just some examples. Things related to behavior change are really important. What do you do in times for resilience and for a time of a shock? How do you communicate messages in a way that really supports the particular needs of women, both on the provider side and on the demand side? Really having the correct language, the correct understanding, I guess the empathy on the needs. That's really, really important. On the public health side, there's also really important issues that need to be tackled on how it is that tackle the side effects of a shock or for resilience that are necessary for women. And then there is the kind of in building resilience that is really important, and kind of thinking about the role of the private sector and role of academia and whatnot is ensuring that women are participants in all the clinical trials for vaccines, for medicines, for anything that will help build that resilience. So those are some of the things that we're discussing and kind of building in on the side of resilience. But resilience is just one little piece of how you implement these bigger strategies and what it is that we at the bank need to create dialogue with governments on.
Yeah, absolutely. So you brought a nice case to invest in women and improve their participation. But moving along that pipeline, we're talking about leadership too, right? Leadership of women in STEM. And there's a difference between being invited to the table and being actually handed the gavel of leadership. So, it reminds me of Shirley Chisholm. She is she's the first Black American woman to be elected to US Congress back in 1968. And as a woman of color, you could imagine how many obstacles she would have had to face. So she said that if they don't give you a seat at the table, bring a folding chair. But maybe we're done with bringing folding chairs. Maybe it's time to redesign that table. And that's my question to Shereen. From WomenLift, WomenLift Health, you've done a lot of investing in women's leadership programs. So I want to ask you, why do you think that leadership investment or investment in leadership programs is important? And what are the structural shifts that you need to see in order to have more women leaders?
I could spend an hour talking about that. But I'm going to sort of tie, and thank you for that question. Thank you for including me on this panel. And I'm going to try and tie a lot of what all three of us have said. So where Kalpana and Kanta's work sort of hands off to us is when women join organizations like Manuela at the World Bank, who happens to be a WomenLift Health Global Fellow. So we have really incredible women in our programs, right? And what we started to realize, the impetus for our work was that we saw in health, like Manuela said, 70% of the entry-level workforce is women. Then you start getting to the mid-level, and it's less than 25% of women. You start getting the very top, that's less than 5%, right? So we are not at those decision-making tables. We are one-offs. So, what we really noticed was that at the mid-career, these women really start to topple off, right? And there's no space for them to rise. They haven't been provided any mentoring or any coaching or any formal introduction into networks, which men have easy access to, right? They have invested tremendously in this sector and health in our specific case. They have amassed tremendous knowledge, which would go to waste if we don't allow them to come to the decision-making tables. And they're an essential bridge between the senior-most people and those who are early and rising career leaders in that organization and need to build that capacity. So our work is focused on accelerating progress in global public health, and we take a very expansive definition of health to include STEM as well, right? Because health is ultimately about improving human life, and it is multidisciplinary in nature. It should be multidisciplinary in nature. And we do this through investing in women's leadership. Why women's leadership? Because first of all, leadership is the lever for impact. That's what we need. We all invest in this, all the funders, the donors, the institutions, we invest in technical solutions. We invest in R&D. That's incredibly important. We assume the leadership will be there. We assume the visioning, the confidence and courage, the ability to develop and mentor a future generation, a future workforce, the resilience needed to make things happen will exist. All day today, I've heard in every panel almost people talking about the need to break silos, the need to do integrated work, to have an ecosystem mindset. Well, where does that come from? We're not all born with it. Some of us are lucky to have that exposure and role models in our families, etc. And others can be trained in it, right? And that's what we're really trying to do, is we're trying to invest in the leadership capacity of individuals, because that is the thing that will ultimately not only increase the probability, but hasten the pace of impact, right? So that's one of the main reasons why we do what we do. Yeah.
That's brilliant. And I know your program also focuses a lot on mentorship, right? Because that's the way you can build leadership. So that's a really important point as well that I wanted to highlight in your programs. But I just wondered if in the audience, I wanted to bring you in a little bit and have a quick show of hands. I want to know how many of you felt you were the only woman in a room or in a professional setting. Oh
Wow.
my gosh, it's a lot. The only woman. And men can also participate. If you were in a room where there was only one other woman, and keep your hands up if you were the leader as the only woman. So great, thank you. So this is why we're all here, really. Being the only person is a little exhausting. We want more participation, and not mere participation, but we want to move towards that powerhouse,
Yeah.
towards the leadership. So that's great. And I'm wondering if anyone from the audience has questions, if you could write down, and I think I have Vandana to give you paper so you can write down and we can read out the questions. But to come back to our panel, we could do a quick moonshot round, actually. I want to ask each one of you if you could make one change, one policy change or one program change or initiative or one mindset change even, because you talked about behavior change, to enable women to stay in STEM and to catalyze women's leadership in STEM, what would it be? I'll start with you, Kalpana.
Oh, with me. Shereen, what you said really resonated. And I think we've spoken so much about the pipeline. We're talking about the powerhouse, and that's where we find the lacks and the bottlenecks and the cracks that, possible powerhouse women slip through, right? And that's where I think we need the structural changes, the systemic changes to keep, the whole system needs to change, right? But you asked what I would change. You said policy, and yeah, and I want to talk from a personal point of view. I was born to a feminist father. So me, my sister, and my mother are who we are because of him, right? His audacious dreams for all three of us. He was our greatest cheerleader, coach, inspiration, critic, everything, right? Now, I cannot wish for certain families for everyone to be born to. None of us got to choose the families we were born into. So, what would it take for every young girl to have that structure around her, that system that allows her to dream boldly, that allows her to be audacious, that does not have a single question about her capacity to deliver, that supports her, teaches her, and allows her to become her higher self? I mean, what is it going to take? Because what happened with me was the luck of the draw. Or what draw? No draw. I mean, the luck of whatever. So I would wish for a systemic structure that allows each person to thrive and be the most audacious, wonderful version of themselves in STEM, beyond STEM, in everything.
Thank you. That's fantastic. But it's still a journey. It takes time for that transformation to happen.
Absolutely.
But Kanta.
I have too many things to say, but I will just stop at one, which is investment. So investment, financial, wherever you make a policy or a strategy, put money for that. And I'm talking to the governments, I'm talking to everybody who's talking about making a bigger change. Also put your money where your mouth is, actually. Secondly, I really want each one of us to not wait for an occasion to do something for somebody. Every next person who needs your help, start volunteering to help. So leadership, but leadership which is talking about supporting the next girl who's asking you questions, who's sharing her dreams with you. So investment in each girl, investment in women's leadership, because, and I'm sure she's going to talk about that. I'm saying, unless you have leadership across, not just in STEM, political leadership, where there are women, 40% or 50% women in parliament, We don't need the highest decision making to think about anything else. They will talk about women there. They will bring women's issues there at the forefront. So we need leadership across so that women can start raising women's issues very comfortably. Right now, they're not comfortable talking about women because they will lose their male constituency, and which is how things have remained where they are. We really need to start believing in women's potential, because it's a talent pool which is being wasted. Forget about anything else. It's a national wastage, it's a world wastage, global wastage. How come we don't think about what they bring, the perspectives that women bring in any field? STEM is, of course, a leader. India is not doing badly on STEM. I think, and Asia is not doing badly. Earlier, America and Europe used to take lead in STEM. Right now, India is taking lead in STEM. No, India is not taking lead. Asia is. China is taking lead. India is doing equally well and will be there. But my point is, this century belongs to women. Women have to realize, but more than women, the system needs to, and what Kalpana was talking about, the system needs to realize that without this potential, we can't talk about a peaceful, dynamic, inclusive, and also prosperous world. So believe in them.
Thank you, Kanta. I think that's the key word, right? Investment, both financial as well as systemic, and individual and personal. Manuela, do you want to add to that?
Thanks so much. Yes, I think building on these previous comments that are fantastic. I think one of the things that is really, really important, and I continue to think about this over and over, is that there is so much to be done, and there's so much leadership to be had, and so much investment, but so much of the dialogue is so often what women can do for women. And I don't think that's fair. And I think that what would be really fantastic, and my dream is that it's not just what women can do for women, but what men can also do for women. What are their roles? What are their roles since childhood? What are their roles in leadership? What are their roles as colleagues and peers? How can they be allies in all of this process? And I think all the men sitting in this room must have at least some of that interest, and it's a matter of questioning what is your role, what can you do, how can you support these necessary changes so that we don't only build equality between men and women in STEM and across different sectors, but we really create a equity which targets the needs both of women and men to the full extent.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Manuela. So that's a call to action to all the men in the audience and in the world. Pass it on to Shereen.
Thank you. I don't think it's going to come as a surprise to anyone that I'm going to advocate for leadership development, and leadership development as a skill that's provided from the pipeline to the powerhouse. Because it's not just about who leads. It's not just about bringing women into power. It's about how they lead, right? At WomenLift Health, we say that our journey is not the I, me, myself journey. A huge component of our journey, in addition to skills like building resilience, having an ecosystem mindset, enhancing your leadership presence, is developing others and paying it forward. So if we are not, as we are rising as leaders in an institution, in society, whatever role we have, if we are not developing others, if we are not paying it forward, we should not be calling ourselves leaders. We need to do that, and that is a huge thing. At this point, I also want to share the very, very important role of mentoring and coaching in our leadership journey, and I'm sure that Manuela would speak to it. And I want to bring up my father, who is not around anymore, Dr. M.K. Bhan, who was the former Secretary for Biotechnology. And we actually did a STEM leadership journey with BIRAC and DBT, which BIRAC was started by my father. And I will say that this is not just our theory of change or just our assertion. We hear from the women directly. These scientists are telling us that because they had the confidence, because they had the leadership presence, because they had the mentoring, now they are applying for seed funding. Now they are applying for that next position. Now they are creating a startup. So they had the technical skills to begin with, but they didn't have the investment in their leadership. And I will say that my father is maybe known for the institutions that he set up. That's a huge part of the legacy that he created. But I think what he should be recognized for is the institutional leaders that he mentored, and that are now a huge part of his legacy, right? So if there's one call to action that I leave you all with, is find that person in your life. Even if you're a young person, an early career person, don't think you can't mentor. You can, all of you can, and all of you must, all of us must. So that's what I leave us with.
Thank you, Shereen. That was really brilliant and moving. Because without mentorship, I don't think any one of us can be where we are. So thank you for that. If you want to add anything to that, mentorship. But I have a few questions from the
I just wanted to share an personal example, and many of you who are connected to me on LinkedIn would vouch for that. I have 21,000 people on my LinkedIn, and that's not the point. Point is, point is that I get about 100 messages on daily basis from young women and men who ask me questions about generally careers and if they can reach out to me and if they can have my number. And I really feel very happy and proud to tell you that there's not even a single message that I leave unattended when I sleep. It takes me 1 hour every day. So I really understand the value. And when I enter a new room in a new city, in a new country, many young people walk up to me to say, we are connected on LinkedIn. You responded to me. It really feels great because many people believed in me and trusted me and invested in me. I feel there's no better way to connect with people, and the importance of connecting with people is also something that we should talk about. But more importantly, maybe you can be somebody's last hope, and don't leave that chance to a chance. Because maybe you can guide a person, maybe you can reach out or give her hope, if nothing else. That world is not coming to an end, and there are people you can reach out to. So I just wanted to say that there's a great power in making somebody feel special, and that is the power of making a personal connection.
Thank you, Kanta, for that very personal example. I think you've set an example for many of us to follow. Thank you.
I just wanted to build on that point. We are at a conference right now, and at WomenLift Health, we have a competency that we call relationship building. And the reason why we call it relationship building and not networking, please make a face. What do you feel when I say networking? Exactly. Everyone hates it, right? Everyone thinks it's disingenuous, inauthentic, takes too much effort. Ugh. What are you really good at doing, women? Maybe some men too. Building relationships, exactly. It's just a reframing, right? But what do you tend to do? You have those same 5 relationships that you kind of hang on to, at work, at home. So the point is to expand the circle. The point is to talk to people that don't look like you, that don't sound like you, that don't work in the same space that you do, so that you can expand your mind as a result of that relationship. I mean, I have had mind-blowing conversations at conferences when I've never met that person again. Just that one time, but it was worth it. So keep expanding that circle and keep connecting with others.
Yeah. So I have some questions from the audience. I think many of them are very topical. So here's one, which is about our current society. So particularly in male-dominated fields, how do you personally ensure that you are supporting women who are earlier in their careers? How do you value their time and their voice? But any of you can answer that. Maybe.
Don't wait for a chance to meet somebody and help. Don't wait for somebody in distress. Every time you connect to somebody in a flight or on a train journey, and it's also very mutual. Sometimes the other person is not looking for any help, or the person who helped you doesn't need your help. Maybe somebody else does. So every day is a chance to do something and make that change again. Help somebody dream, help somebody have hope. If nothing else to give, these 2 things you can always give to young people.
Kalpana, do you have an example?
Yeah, I was just thinking, a lot of this has to do with empathy, and a lot of this has to do with putting yourself in that other person's position. So you said, what if you're one woman in a male dominated space? What if you're a different person in a very homogenous space? It doesn't matter. Change the word woman to something else. It is incumbent on those who are the majority to make to really make an effort, an authentic effort, to may, to allow that person to feel safe, to help them grow, to be available, etc. Because all of us are part of the movement. And I think everyone here has kind of said it that, it's not that one person's problem. It is everybody's duty, everybody around that one person's duty to make the change and to be a catalyst for that change, right? So don't be shy. Chances are you are part of the system and there's someone new that's coming. What can you do to make it easier for them? Pay it forward, and they will pay it forward. I think that's what hark to.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I would just repeat that. Build relationships and develop others, right? Yeah, I mean, when you see, and you can even be strategic about it. Build alliances, right? There are people that you have things in common with, goals, shared purpose, shared goals. And how do you discover that? You discover that with conversation. Talk to people, right? And then you figure out their needs. And if you can serve those needs, serve those needs. If you can connect them to someone else, connect them to someone else, right?
Yeah, just one more thing that from my experience of mentoring younger women in my work, I think it's also other than the empathy and all of the pay it forward kind of realization that I've come to where I've come because others have helped me. There's also an aspect that I think is okay. It's also you can also be selfish about it and realize that when you're mentoring somebody, you're gaining so much. It's also for you. You're learning from somebody else. You're learning from a different perspective, from a different generation, from people that have different interests, um, different ideas about things, and that will be enriching to you, which is something to always keep in mind, and I think it's okay to admit that it's also good for you as a mentor. It's a two-way thing.
Yeah, that's really important to note as well, that the whole mentorship aspect is critical. Now, here's another question. Can you give a real example of a strong and effective act of solidarity and support from a male ally that you've seen that others could emulate? I know you talked about your father who supported you, but how would others emulate such actions? Any examples?
My husband. I'm here today because, and I have a 7-year-old. He's at home. He's taking care of my 7-year-old. He doesn't call me every 5 minutes asking me where this is and where that is. He knows where everything is in the kitchen. He's perfectly capable of cooking. And I was just telling them earlier that I married a man, a white American man who makes me chai every Saturday morning and supports me in every possible conceivable way. So I think that choice of a life partner is a very important one. Give it a lot of thought, a lot of thought, a lot of and ask all those questions, all of those. Do you want to have kids? Are you okay if I make more money than you? Are you okay if I travel? Just ask those questions. It's not just all romance, right? I mean, it takes a lot to build a life together.
Yeah. And you spoke about choosing a life partner. I would also take it one step further and say choose your leaders carefully. When you are considering a move or a change, and I'm speaking from my lived experience, be very clear about the kind of leader you want to work with, because that's going to affect your capacity to grow. It's going to affect your capacity to mentor everyone who's in your team, and it's going to affect way too many things than I care to recount at this point, right? Be very clear about the kind of leader you want to work with, right? And then be very clear about the kind of leader you are and want to become, and the kind of leader you don't want to become. Always keep your eyes and ears open. So you spoke about an act of male solidarity. I think we all have very, concrete examples of male colleagues who stood up for us, who, when someone spoke over me in a meeting at some point, it was a male colleague who said, just a second, I think that was her idea, which at that time was something that made me feel very touched, and that gave me the confidence to say, I wasn't imagining that it was my idea. It really was my idea, and this person took it. So I think we all have these acts of micro goodness that, we talk about microaggressions, but micro goodness, do not underestimate how powerful that can be, in the long run. Yeah.
That's a beautiful term, micro goodness. It's something we can all incorporate in our daily lives. Yeah, we talked about parents, partners, colleagues, friends, but also mentors, right? We have the ability to choose our mentors. And personally, I've benefited a lot from mentors, male mentors. I have one very special mentor in the audience here, Dr. Mathu Santosham, who's really played a big role in many people's lives. So mentorship goes both ways, and there are some things that you can choose. And this was one example of how a male can be an ally in your journey in life. So here's another question: is safety in the workplace for women equally important as skills? Do they help women stay in STEM fields? Yeah, go ahead, Kanta.
That's our pet work and pet subject. In UN Women, we work on safety of women, violence against women across the globe, and that's also something that we do in India. And safety is one of the most structural barriers women face in achieving their goals. It starts from home. So safety at home, safety in public spaces, safety at workplace, and safety in the cyberspace. And we don't realize that when one small, and I'm not talking about America, I'm talking about India, when one small incident happens to a young woman, 5 others drop out. So it has that kind of impact, whereas boys continue to go to school. So when violence is so structural, and when we want our women to go and use technology and be online, but we don't put safeguards in place to protect their interests, and how that kind of trauma they carry through their lives, it's really something that we are not doing right then. Even women leaders, Ma'am Smriti Rani was speaking this morning, the kind of trolling she faces. And any woman leader and any woman who is in public space who writes something, even a normal opinion on internet, and see the trolling that happens. So these are very, very critical things that we need to be careful about. And safety at workspace is something that people choose to inflict on others. It's not inbuilt there. The system doesn't allow you to. There are policies there. The office looks very beautiful, yet sexual harassment happens on a daily basis in world-class organizations. And we just keep putting it under the carpet because the organization's name is very important and more important than individual trauma or what happens to the women workforce there. It is rampant. It is more common than you and I think. It is more unaddressed than you and I think, and it needs to be addressed if we want to bring women to work. And that's where I was saying industry is not ready to have women. All these things will have to be put in place if you want an equal, respectful workforce, and where people can mentor each other, even men. And I'm saying, where are those good men who can speak up and say, hey, I'm going to be playing this role here. I'm going to talk to my fellow brothers and say, this is not right, this is not correct, you can't do it. But again, not putting responsibility only on men. Everybody will have to speak against it. This is not acceptable. How can you take somebody else's right and exercise your own? And women are then called names because they are trying to protect themselves. We start like that from home, and then we shrink like this by the time we reach office. And it is really terrible. And it is bad, and so it is real.
Thank you, Kanta. That was very, very articulate. So I think we're almost at the end of our panel discussion, and a few really important
Oh,
points.
there's one question.
Sorry.
Oh,
You dare not.
your mentor.
So I've really learned a lot from you. It's very intimidating with these powerful women sitting there and making a comment. But I do think there needs to be a fundamental change, not just among women, but in society as a whole.
Yes.
Even in the most advanced societies, where the husband and the wife works, come back from work, who's going to take care of the kid? Who's going to make sure there's food on the table? It is majority of the times. I mean, you're fortunate, Shereen. By the way, Shereen, I've known her since she was a baby. And she was just as feisty those days. And I know her father very well. But also there is this dynamic at work, and I hope I don't offend any woman by what I'm going to say. It's not only women, men who necessarily don't treat the women well. I can give you an example of my own daughter, highly qualified. Shereen, you know her. She's a business major. She is mentioned several times in their infrastructure. There'll be another young man who's actually junior, but his voice gets heard, both by men supervisors and women supervisors. That culture needs to change.
Absolutely.
It's not, I mean, women have done phenomenal things, whether you politically like them or not, like Indira Gandhi, Margaret Thatcher. These were brave women. They were able to take on men. They were able to do it. I'm sure they faced a lot. But I think needs to be a grassroots movement everywhere that says there is still a mentality somehow a man's education is more important than a woman's education, and that needs to stop. And that starts at a very grassroots level. Thank you.
Thank you, Mathu.
Point.
We have one more question, but I think we'll stop after this
Yeah,
question.
Anita, just I wanted to make one more point. Sir, absolutely right. I think men don't think women are equal. And I'll tell you the reason for that. Men are born with something, a land or a house. Or the moment a boy is born, he owns something. Women have to earn it. Till the time women don't have equal access to the property, men are not going to treat them equally, whoever we become. So women in this hall, please start buying property in your name. Please do. Please do. Don't say, I want a Sabyasachi lehenga for 10 lakh. Ask for that money. Ask for that money to be put in your FD. Ask your father to give you equal amount of property and don't be shy about it. But more than your father, earn your own money and buy the first house yourself. Buy the first car yourself. Don't wait for your husband to bring it to you. You will get a different kind of husband when you have these things. If you'll wait for him to give, please, and having a husband is not a qualification, to be very honest. That's not the destination we want to reach. If it happens on the way, beautiful. If it doesn't happen, doesn't matter. Right.
Thank you.
But
Kanta. I think
really start believing in who you are, and you are bloody damn rocking.
Kanta, I just want to say that I can vouch for that because I did own my own place when I got married, and I think it made a difference.
Nobody should tell you, get out of my house. Yeah? Have your own house.
it's very quick
Yeah,
question.
yeah. Sorry, I had to react to the fact that she said most women here would say that their father is a feminist, and because most educated men are feminists when it comes to their daughters, and that's why we are all here today. But at some point, when you, as a woman, even if you are educated, you when you have children, one child, two, and more, and then you have to make a choice. You have to choose how is the society has the community often doesn't have enough resources to help you ease the burden of taking care of your children, taking care of your parents, and pursuing a career. So I think that's where the women, we have to make a choice, and most of the time you choose what is most important. at that moment, which is the children, the family, and then the career is just a livelihood. So that's what I wanted to say.
Yeah, thank you for that comment. But just to summarize, I think we've covered many topics, and what we're left with is how do we actually implement this? How do we walk the talk? Maybe it's something that begins with us. It's the change has to happen from within, and we interface at all walks of life. So it's for us to begin that whole process and keep that going and make that movement, in the pipeline, move from the participation aspect to the powerhouse aspect. Another way to look at this metaphor is just beyond the pipeline, and that's what Dr. Santosham also mentioned. It's the ecosystem that's around this pipeline. So this has been likened to chutes and ladders. You go up and down, but it's the environment that ultimately also helps. We're part of that environment. So with this, I'd like to thank the panelists very much. I think you were wonderful, real powerhouses, and also the audience for your remarkable participation. I think this was a very vibrant and lively discussion. I want to talk a little bit about also our fellowship program. So as part of the India Institute, there is a program to support women in STEM, particularly those in early career. And we're just starting the program today. And I want to thank Mr. Raj Gupta and Kamla Gupta for actually supporting this program and giving us the seed funding. And I want to thank all of you and the organizers for this event, particularly Nitisha and Kunal, for the amazing organization. Thank you, all of
On
you.
fellowship, can I say one more thing? Sorry, guys, I've spoken too much. One more thing for young people. Find a chance every year to go on a learning trip. I practice that and I'm saying it brings huge benefits, huge. The network word, forget about networking, but you will grow a network of people, friends who you know very well. So go beyond your comfort zone, apply for a fellowship, go somewhere out of your workplace and connect with other people. That has helped me personally a lot in my life. Nitisha was one of our trainees and she brought me here. And I'm saying this is the best way to also find these connections. And what you were talking about, Shereen, go out and learn as much as you can and connect with different people, not only from your field, but also from different fields. It helps.
Thank you, everyone.
A big thank you for our panel.